Consider the following case. A police officer comes up to you and says, excuse me, I see you have drugs on you. You are under arrest. And you respond to the officer by saying, no, 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 you don't understand. I'm a drug dealer. I was hired to do this job and deal drugs. So you can't hold me responsible. I'm just doing my job. Well, of course, they would never accept that. What if you said, yes, technically, I murdered someone, but you have to see, I am a hired assassin. And that place you just saw me rob, I'm part of a group that robs places for a living. That's how we make money, and this is our job. We are just doing our job, just like you, for God's sakes. So don't hold us responsible. Don't put us in jail, because we're not responsible so long as it's part of a job that we're doing. Well, of course, they would never accept that from you. So they know that the response that they use is totally unjustified. Look, murder is still murder. Even if done by a group of people, even if that group of people has camouflage costumes, even if that group calls itself the government group or the military group or the Marine group or the Army group, it does not matter. Even if some other group told that group to do so, kidnapping is still kidnapping, regardless of whether, wait, hold on, is the kidnapper getting paid? Wait, was the kidnapper told to do so by another person or group of persons? It's completely irrelevant. And theft is still theft. You do not have a right to initiate violence against peaceful people, or fraud for that matter. So really, the good cop, bad cop question can be disposed of decisively. So instead of you sending me the video of two cops playing basketball with a kid on his driveway, and then me sending you the Eric Garner video, then you sending me the video of a cop helping someone, and then us going back and forth for a year, we need only consider the following. 1, every cop has agreed as part of his or her job is to enforce laws, all of them. 2, many of the laws are manifestly unjust or even cruel and wicked. 3, therefore, every cop has agreed to act as an enforcer of laws that are manifestly unjust or even cruel and wicked. There are no good cops, Dr. Robert Higgs. Look, there's a lot of things that officers take an oath to put people in jail for that they're totally justified in doing. Opening up a business without a license, engaging in prostitution, gambling, consuming drugs, not chipping in for the welfare state or the warfare state, building something on your property without permission from the mass murdering, theft-funded ruling class. So if you've taken an oath to put people in cages for these things, you're a bad person. It's not, well, let's look at the good and the bad. No, sorry, I don't need to hear the Jeffrey Epstein background story or the Harvey Weinstein or the Mexican drug cartel murderers. I don't need to hear all the good that they've done. They do stimulate the economy when they purchase and increase consumer demand. That's completely irrelevant. They initiate violence against peaceful people. They are bad people, period. Mark Passio says, the painful truth, the order follower always bears more moral culpability than the order giver, because the order follower is the one who actually performed the action, and in taking such action actually brought the resultant harm into physical manifestation. Order following is the pathway to every form of evil and chaos in our world. It should never be seen as a virtue by anyone who considers themselves a moral human being. Order followers have ultimately been personally responsible and morally culpable for every form of slavery and every single totalitarian regime that has ever existed on the face of the earth.
Getting back to this, a lot of people will come back with these people like the police and other state officials. They're just following orders and they're just doing their jobs. And that sounds so, for lack of a better word, boomer to me. They're just doing their jobs. But you have taken that on. So what would you say to somebody who says, well, he may not like the law either, but what do you expect him to do?
It's a strange thing that people use this as an argument, because it sounds almost absurd when you describe like what they're really doing. So imagine I said, okay, like I decide to work for you. Like I'm gonna become your new employee, and you say, all right, I'm gonna pay you like $10,000 a month plus health insurance and give you a pension if you do whatever I say. And then I'm like, that sounds great. And for the first couple of days, you have me like file books or something like that, and do some photo editing or whatnot. And then on day number 5, you're like, I need you to go beat the crap out of that little kid over there. And then I go and do it. That would be absurd. Obviously, I wouldn't acquire an obligation or permission to do that simply because you ordered me to do it. And it'd be weird for me to say, oh, no, you don't understand. The reason I have to do it is because I promised to follow his commands in exchange for money. Like, that's not a justification.
doesn't sound very flattering when you put it that way.
And that's not how promises work. What a promise can do is you have a range of freedom, things you're permitted to do. And when you make a promise, you restrict that range. So I promised my wife, all the promises that come with marriage. One of the things I did was I took the range of women I'm allowed to sleep with and shrink it down to one, right? That's what happens in a marriage. I have like now an obligation to like provide for her and do certain things to her that I wouldn't normally have. I restricted my freedom in that way in virtue of my promise keeping. But you don't, in virtue of making a promise, lose your prior obligations. So you have a pre-existing obligation to respect other people's rights, to treat them as ends in themselves, and to avoid harming them in certain ways. And you can't lose that obligation simply because you make a promise to another person to do what they say. Yeah. So it's weird that people would think otherwise. There's other kind of arguments about following orders that are a little bit more sophisticated, where they say things like, look, it might very well be that you think something is wrong, but your superiors, you have good reason to believe your superiors have superior knowledge to you, and so you should defer to them. And there are cases where that makes sense, but again, notice it's nothing special about government. We had strong reason to believe that like the zombie apocalypse virus is now widespread across the world. And in this sci-fi story, you are the scientist who's really good at identifying who has the zombie apocalypse virus. And you like yell to me, shoot that person right over there right away. Well, maybe I should defer to you because I have good reason to think whether that person's infected or not. We could imagine cases like that with the government where, they know something is wrong, or they know this, they have knowledge which makes something permissible. And you have good reason to think they're telling the truth and that they know better than you. So that sometimes happens, but that's not special to government again. And at the same time, we also have good reason to think that governments often lie about this stuff. So you should be quite skeptical about their claims to superior knowledge.
There is such a thing as blame for the commission of actions which have resulted in harm or loss to others. This is what culpable means. It comes from the Latin culpa, meaning fault or blame. It means at fault or deserving of blame. Now, who's more morally culpable? The order giver or the order follower? And please recognize I've underlined and capitalized the term more. I'm not telling you the order givers are not morally culpable. They are. That's not the question. Are any of these people morally culpable is not my question. My question is, look at the full question. Who is more morally culpable? The order giver or the order follower? Always. Always. At all times and places. At all times and places. I put this meme up on Facebook, and I got some hate back for it. Okay? People don't want to hear this. Like I said, I'm not here to be popular, to make friends. I'm here to tell people what the truth actually is, and they have to accept it or reject it on their own. I made this meme and put it up on Facebook, and it had politicians on the left that said, my actions, underlined and capitalized, didn't cause that. And then there were some soldiers or Marines, whatever they are, order followers on the right side, and they're also saying the same statement. My actions didn't cause that. And then at the bottom, I just put this question. Oh, I'm sorry. Looks like, oh, I'm sorry. At the top, I put this question. Who is lying and who is telling the truth? So who's lying here? And if people can't see, I hope that they can see this horrific picture. This is the result of, bombings that took place in the Middle East around Iraq. And it's a father carrying his dead child in his arms, okay? Maybe if bombs were raining down on our children, we might think differently about going in and waging imperialism on other nations. I don't know. Maybe we might think differently about it, right? But when it happens to somebody else's child, that's okay. That's done in the name of freedom, okay? Well, who caused this? Did they cause it? No, they didn't cause it. They are not the actual cause of this. Because you know what all they did? They signed some pieces of paper, wearing their expensive suits, okay? And they told these guys, they said, well, you're under our orders now. Go and bomb these people. And you know what these people did? Say, yes, sir, and go and drop the bombs. And fire off the ammunition. Okay? These are the people whose actions create things like this, not these people. All they're doing is speaking into somebody else's ear. All they've done is speech. Speech, not actions. See, again, really look. My actions didn't cause that. Yes, it is. If these people are saying my actions didn't cause that, they're lying. Very, very, very painful and difficult thing for people to comprehend and accept. I'm not telling you shouldn't feel bad hearing this, but I'm telling you it's true. The painful truth, the order follower always bears more moral culpability than the order giver. For the reason that the order follower is the one who actually performed the action, and in taking such action, actually brought the resultant harm into physical manifestation. Order following is the pathway to every form of evil and chaos in our world. It should never be seen as a virtue by anyone who considers themselves a moral human being. Order followers have ultimately been personally responsible and morally culpable for every form of slavery and every single totalitarian regime that has ever existed upon the face of the earth. That's the painful truth that people don't want to accept because they want to believe the absolute nonsense that order following is a virtue of any kind. And it needs to be obliterated from the face of the earth because it's not the way to any kind of virtues or order. It's the pathway to evil and annihilation. That's what it is. Responsibility versus abdication. So why don't these people want to think for themselves?
It's too easy.
It's too easy to just follow the orders of somebody else. They believe somehow magically this absolves them of personal responsibility to choose right from wrong. An individual's personal responsibility to choose right action over wrong action for themselves always belongs to that individual. And that responsibility can never be given to another person or passed along. One can only claim and imagine that they can abdicate their personal responsibility for such choice to someone else. It can never actually be done in reality. You're only making a claim. I'm not responsible for that behavior because this person told me to do it. That's just a claim. And moreover, what it really is it's just a damn lie. Okay? More simply put, an individual is always personally responsible for their own actions, period, and the end. If you did it, you're responsible for it. There are no cop-outs. Stop trying to make excuses or justifications for criminal behavior. Own up to personal responsibility. If you did wrong action, you did it. You caused it. I like how David Icke words this. He says, accept responsibility for yourself and your actions, thoughts, and words. You alone make these choices, so you alone are answerable to the consequences of your behavior. The feeble excuse that your boss required it, that the establishment expected it, holds no truth or justification. What is the point of having principles if you allow others to dictate your behavior? Really, those who allow others to dictate their behavior don't have principles. And there's a reason they don't have principles, because they hate themselves. They're in psychological self-loathing, and there's a reason they're in that state, which my future work is going to cover in depth, in extensive depth and detail. At the end of the day, you will judge your performance and the contribution you've made to creation. It will not be based on what another expected of you or what you did because you felt trapped.